At 11 p.m., my daughter's nurse called. Your daughter is in surgery. Her hand was crushed, and her orbital bone is fractured. I raced to the hospital. In the hallway, her mother-in-law stared at me coldly and said, "Consider this a lesson in family discipline." I said nothing. By morning, my son-in-law had been arrested by the FBI for financial fraud. Days later, 12 men surrounded my truck. "You dared come after our family," one shouted. I slowly lowered the window. Then they saw who was sitting in my passenger seat, and every one of them fell silent. If this story already has you hooked, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Your city, your country. Let's see how far the Revenge Dad family reaches. Some elements of this story have been shaped for storytelling and educational purposes. Names and places are fictional, but the lessons inside are ones worth carrying. The last thing I did before my phone rang was check the lock on the shop door. Twice. Force of habit from 19 years of making sure things held when they were supposed to hold. My name is Walter Mercer. I am 60 years old. I run a small machine shop on the eastern edge of Los Angeles, and on the night of Thursday, June 12th, 2025, my whole life cracked down the middle like a piece of metal that had been stressed 1 degree past its limit. The call came at 11:03. "Mr. Mercer." The woman's voice was low and tight, the voice of someone who delivered bad news for a living and never got used to it. "This is Cameron Doss. I'm a nurse at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Your daughter Claire has been brought in. She's in surgery right now. Her right hand sustained severe crush injuries to multiple bones. Her left orbital bone is fractured. My chest caved in like a door someone had kicked from the wrong side. Is she alive?" I asked. My own voice sounded like it belonged to a stranger. "She's in surgery," Cameron said carefully. "The team is doing everything they can. You need to come now, Mr. Mercer." I don't remember walking to my truck. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I remember the engine noise and the yellow lines on the freeway blurring together, and my hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached, and thinking about Claire at 7 years old, standing on a step stool in this same shop, watching me work, asking me what every single tool was called and what it did. She was the kind of kid who needed to know how everything worked. She never stopped being that kid. I parked crooked in the hospital lot and didn't care. The elevator doors opened on the surgical floor, and the first person I saw was Victoria Caldwell. She was standing outside the surgical suite in a cream-colored blazer, her purse resting in the crook of her arm, her posture so composed it made my stomach turn. 67 years old, silver hair pinned back, the kind of woman who appeared in the Los Angeles Times lifestyle section at charity galas. She looked like she was waiting for a table at a restaurant, not standing outside a room where my daughter's hand was being reconstructed. A young man I recognized vaguely as one of her nephews stood 2 steps behind her, his eyes moving to me the moment I stepped off the elevator. She wasn't here because she was worried. She was here to make sure the story that left this hospital tonight was the story she had written. I walked straight to her. "What happened to Claire?" Victoria tilted her head slightly the way a person does when they've already decided how a conversation is going to go. She crossed the line, "Walter. Consider this a lesson in family discipline." The words hit me somewhere behind my sternum, and for a full 3 seconds, I wanted to put my fist through the wall beside her head. My jaw locked, my back teeth pressed together hard enough to hurt. 19 years of training told me that the worst thing you can do in a high-stakes situation is let the other person see what's happening inside you. So, I breathed through my nose, and I looked at Victoria Caldwell, and I looked at the nephew standing behind her, and I understood exactly why she was here. She was here to control what got said tonight, what got reported, what version of events made it onto paper before anyone had a chance to tell a different story. I stepped past her without a word. Dr. Patricia Harmon met me at the end of the hallway. She was still in her surgical cap, a tablet in one hand, and she spoke to me the way I respect directly, without softening anything down to nothing. "Mr. Mercer, I want to be honest with you about what we're seeing," she said. "Claire's right hand has 4 fractured metacarpals and significant soft tissue damage. The injury pattern is consistent with compression from a mechanical vise, industrial grade. I've seen this type of trauma before, and I can tell you clearly that it does not come from a fall. I've already begun documenting everything, and I'll preserve the full imaging record." My throat tightened until I could barely swallow. Claire's right hand, the hand she used for everything. the hand she'd been using since she was 12 years old to take apart and rebuild every mechanical thing she could get hold of. "Will she keep function in it?" I asked. Dr. Harmon met my eyes. "We're doing everything possible. The next 48 hours will tell us a great deal." A uniformed officer approached me, maybe 20 minutes later. A young man with a notepad and the careful, neutral face of someone who had been told to collect information without stepping on anything. He introduced himself and told me the incident report listed Claire's injuries as the result of a fall from scaffolding at a commercial warehouse. I listened to every word he said. I noted his name. I did not tell him that scaffolding doesn't produce compression fractures across 4 metacarpals in a parallel pattern. I didn't tell him anything. What I knew about how evidence worked told me that the most valuable thing I could do right now was listen, remember, and say as little as possible. At 2 in the morning, a man came off the elevator wearing a jacket with the Caldwell Logistics logo stitched above the left breast pocket. He was perhaps 40 broad through the shoulders with the careful eyes of someone running a rehearsed errand. "I'm here to collect Ms. Caldwell's personal effects," he said to the nurse at the station. "Her phone and her bag." I stepped forward before the nurse could respond. "What's your name?" He looked at me. "Miles?" "Miles what?" His jaw shifted. He didn't answer. I turned to the nurse. "Please call security." Then I pulled out my own phone and walked to the window at the end of the hall, and I looked down at the parking structure below, and I watched Miles walk out through the entrance doors and cross to a black SUV idling at the curb. I read the plate number out loud to myself 3 times until it was locked in. Then I went back to the waiting area and sat down and pressed my palms flat against my thighs to stop them from shaking. Close to 4 in the morning, Cameron Doss came to find me. She was carrying a small plastic bag with Claire's personal items, her keys, her earrings, her phone. The screen on the phone was shattered a spiderweb of cracks across the glass, but when I pressed the side button, it lit up. There were no missed calls. There was one outgoing text sent to my number at 9:41 that evening. 3 words, "Mom's box." My breath left my body all at once. I sat there in that plastic waiting room chair and stared at those 2 words until my eyes burned and the whole shape of the night rearranged itself around them. Claire hadn't sent that message in a panic. She had sent it because she had planned for this, because she had known before she walked into wherever she walked into tonight that something might go wrong. My daughter had left me a map. The drive home took 23 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the dashboard the entire way, counting the minutes the way I used to count, seconds before a breach, needing something concrete to hold on to, while everything else was coming apart. The streets of Los Angeles at 4 in the morning are wide and empty and honest. No traffic to hide behind, no noise to fill the silence. Just the freeway lights ticking past overhead like a metronome, keeping time for a song I didn't want to hear. I parked in my driveway and sat in the truck for a moment. My hands were still on the wheel. I made myself let go, finger by finger, Mom's box. Claire had been 11 years old when Margaret and I showed her the box for the first time. I had built it myself from a piece of walnut, salvaged from a job site, dovetail joints, no nails. The lid fitted so precisely that it sealed with a soft pop of air when you closed it. Margaret had kept her most important things inside it. Letters. A photograph of her own mother. The deed to the first house we ever owned together. When Margaret died 8 years ago, Claire had sat on the floor of our bedroom for a long time, just holding that box in her lap, not opening it, just holding it. Nearly a year ago, Claire had taken the box from my house. She told me she wanted to keep it close. I thought she meant it as comfort. I had been wrong about that. The attic stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed. The box was exactly where Claire had left it on the shelf behind the old camping gear, tucked between a cardboard box of Margaret's books and a lamp I kept meaning to donate. I carried it down to the kitchen table and set it under the overhead light. My hands were steadier than they had any right to be. I opened the lid. There were no letters inside, no photographs. Margaret's things were gone, replaced by 3 items, a small flash drive in a Ziploc bag, a black composition notebook with Claire's handwriting on the cover, and a sealed envelope with my name written across the front, in the same handwriting, neat and deliberate, the way Claire wrote when she was being careful about something. My chest ached so badly I had to press my fist against my sternum and breathe through it. She had planned this. While she was sitting across from me at Sunday dinners, while she was calling me on her lunch breaks to talk about nothing in particular, she had been carrying this, whatever this was, and she had been afraid enough to build herself a dead man's switch and hide it in her mother's box. I got the old laptop from the hall closet. It was 4 years out of date and had never been connected to the internet. I used it for drafting shop invoices when I didn't want to deal with the main computer. I plugged the flash drive in and opened it without connecting to any network. The drive contained 437 files, spreadsheets, PDFs, scanned documents, transaction records, correspondence. The file names were methodical, dated, categorized, cross-referenced. Claire had been building this for months. Every file had a creation timestamp. The earliest went back 8 months. I read for 2 hours without moving from the table. What I found was not simple. The financial records showed Caldwell Logistics making payments, large ones, recurring, structured to stay just under federal reporting thresholds, to a series of vendors with addresses that, when I searched them in the notebook's handwritten index, did not appear to correspond to any real business operation. The money moved through layers. One company paid a second, the second paid a third. By the third or fourth transfer, the original source was buried under enough corporate paperwork to make a person's eyes cross. In Claire's notebook, she had mapped it by hand. Arrows connecting company names, dollar amounts circled in red, dates highlighted, and on the third page, a column of names, people inside Caldwell Logistics who appeared repeatedly in the transaction authorizations. Ethan's name was circled 3 times. I put the notebook down and pressed both hands flat on the table and stared at the ceiling until the feeling in my throat settled enough for me to breathe normally. My son-in-law, the man my daughter had been living with for 6 years, the man who had shaken my hand at their wedding and looked me in the eye. The last line in the notebook was written in a different pen, darker like she had added it later. If something happens to me, call Daniel Reeves. The name below this means find Samuel Price. Below it, in careful block letters, Samuel Price. I did not know who Samuel Price was, but I knew Daniel Reeves the way you know someone who has seen you at your absolute worst and did not look away. We had served together for 4 years. After he left the Army, Daniel had spent 2 decades building a practice in financial fraud investigation out of New York. He was 63 years old and the most careful thinker I had ever met. I called him at 6:37 in the morning. He picked up on the second ring, which meant he had been awake already, which meant some part of him had been expecting this call or one like it. "Walter." His voice was alert, no trace of sleep in it. "I need you in Los Angeles," I said. "Today." A beat of quiet. Then, "How bad?" I looked at the 437 files on the screen. I looked at the 3 circles around Ethan's name. I looked at the sealed envelope with my name on it that I still hadn't opened because some part of me was not ready for what might be inside. "Bad enough that I'm not saying anything else on the phone," I said. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I'll get the first flight out." He arrived at my kitchen table by 2:15 that afternoon, still in his travel jacket, a carry-on bag dropped by the door. He sat across from me, opened the laptop, and read without speaking for 40 minutes. His expression did not change much. Daniel had the kind of face that processed information internally, gave nothing away to the outside world. But I watched his jaw tighten once, and then again, and I watched him go back and reread a section he had already covered, which told me more than any expression would have. When he finally looked up, his eyes were serious in a way that made my stomach drop all over again. "Walter," Daniel said, and his voice had the careful weight of a man choosing each word before he released it. "This isn't a few fake invoices. This is architecture. Someone built this deliberately over a long period of time, and they knew exactly what they were doing." My throat went dry. "Ethan," Daniel turned the laptop to face me and pointed to a column of account numbers at the bottom of one of the spreadsheets. "Ethan's name is on the authorizations, but look at the origination dates on these accounts." He tapped the screen. The earliest ones predate Ethan's involvement in the company by at least 4 years. Somebody else laid the foundation. The kitchen felt very still. Outside the morning was getting bright, the kind of clear Los Angeles morning that made everything look cleaner than it was. "There's one more thing," Daniel said. He scrolled to a page I had looked at twice and not fully understood, a line item buried inside a column of vendor payments, a name that appeared only once in a transfer authorization, dated 3 years ago. He pointed to it and looked at me. The name was Judge Owen Hartley. Daniel's voice dropped. "If that connection is what it looks like," he said, "then we need to understand something very important before we take a single step. Because that name is the reason every investigation into this company has died before it went anywhere. Daniel made the call to Rebecca Sloan at 8 minutes past 9 while I was standing at the kitchen counter pouring coffee I didn't want into a mug I wasn't going to drink. I needed something to do with my hands. Rebecca. Daniel's voice shifted into a register I hadn't heard from him in years. Precise clipped the tone he used when he needed someone to understand that a situation was serious without wasting a single word getting there. I need you at an address in East Los Angeles within the hour. Bring your financial fraud files. All of them. He read her my address and hung up before she could ask questions. I looked at him across the kitchen. You trust her? I trust her the way I trust a good blade, Daniel said, wrapping both hands around his own coffee mug. She's sharp, she doesn't bend, and she will absolutely cut you if you're careless with her. But right now, Walter Sharp is exactly what we need. Rebecca Sloan arrived 51 minutes later in a gray blazer and flat shoes, a leather document bag over one shoulder, and the expression of a woman who had already decided to take this seriously before she walked through the door. She was 51 years old, dark-haired, with the kind of focused eyes that made you feel like she was reading a contract you didn't know you'd signed. She sat at my kitchen table, opened the laptop, and spent 12 minutes going through Claire's files without saying a word. Not silent in the passive way, but concentrated, her pen moving steadily across a yellow legal pad, her lips pressed together, the way people's do when their mind is working faster than their hand can follow. Then she sat back and let out a breath that wasn't quite a sigh and wasn't quite a curse. I recognized two of these entities, she said, tapping the screen with her pen. Meridian Supply Partners and a holding company called West Coast Fulfillment Group. Her voice tightened at the edges. 3 years ago, I represented a small trucking company out of Torrance. Family operation been running for 22 years. Caldwell Logistics was their primary contract. When Caldwell stopped paying suddenly without explanation, my client couldn't make payroll, couldn't make their loan payments, lost everything in 4 months. She paused. Both of those entities appear in the payment trail that led to my client's contract being terminated. The muscle in her jaw flexed. She was angry, not the hot, impulsive kind of angry, but the cold, settled kind that doesn't go away and doesn't need to announce itself. Before we go any further, Rebecca said, straightening in her chair and looking directly at me, I need to establish something right now. Nothing in these files gets touched. Nothing gets printed from this drive without my supervision. Nothing gets sent anywhere without going through me first. Chain of custody in a federal financial fraud case is everything, Mr. Mercer. If we break it at any point, even accidentally, a good defense attorney can use that to contaminate the entire evidentiary record. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I haven't modified a single file, I said. I read them on an offline machine. Everything is exactly as Claire left it. Rebecca nodded, and something in her posture relaxed by a fraction. Good, that's very good. She turned back to the laptop and scrolled to the account origination dates Daniel had flagged the night before. She studied them for a long moment, and then she said something that felt like the floor shifting under my feet. These accounts were opened before Ethan Caldwell had any operational authority in this company. Her voice was measured, deliberate, each word placed carefully. He became COO 4 years ago. These originate 6 and 7 years back. Whoever designed this system did so before Ethan was in a position to design anything. Daniel leaned forward. The terminal accounts where the money ends up after moving through the layers. Do you see the fund designation on page 31? Rebecca navigated there. Her eyes moved across the screen. Then she went very still, and when she spoke again, her voice had dropped by half a register. This fund has Victoria Caldwell's name on the registration documents, she said. Not Ethan's, Victoria's. The name landed in the kitchen like something heavy dropped from a height. I gripped the edge of the counter behind me. My knuckles went white. All this time, I had been thinking about Ethan, furious, at Ethan sick, at the thought of Ethan, and Ethan was just the surface layer. The woman in the cream-colored blazer who had stood outside my daughter's surgical suite at midnight and told me this was family discipline had built this whole machine herself 15 years ago and handed it to her son like an inheritance. My voice came out rougher than I intended. Can you take this to the FBI? Rebecca looked at me with an expression that was careful and precise. The FBI field office here in Los Angeles already has an open investigation into Caldwell Logistics, she said. They've been building their case for over a year, but they've been missing the internal documentation, the records that tie the shell companies directly to the operating accounts from inside the company. What Claire collected is exactly that. This gives them probable cause to move on an arrest warrant. She paused. I've worked with the lead agent on financial cases before. I've brought evidence to federal investigators through proper channels before as counsel for a cooperating source. I know exactly how to walk this in without contaminating what they have already built. I'll make the call today. Everything goes through me. Nothing direct, nothing informal. That's non-negotiable. I nodded. My throat felt like it had something lodged in it that wouldn't move. We drove to the hospital together, Daniel and I walked back into Cedars-Sinai just before noon. Victoria was still there. Of course she was still there, standing near the family waiting area, with a phone pressed to her ear, and the nephew hovering 6 feet away, like a man who had been told to stay close, but not close enough to hear anything. She saw me come off the elevator and ended her call. "Where did you go this morning?" she asked, and there was something underneath the politeness of the question. Something probing, like she was testing the temperature of a room before deciding how to behave in it. "Fed the dog," I said. She studied me for a moment with those flat, composed eyes, and I met her gaze and held it and thought about what Rebecca had just told me, and thought about the fund with Victoria's name on the registration documents, and thought about 15 years of architecture built on other people's money and other people's ruin. I kept my face completely still. I had learned how to do that in places a lot more dangerous than a hospital hallway. At 9:46 that morning, I know the exact time, because I was looking at the clock above the elevator when it happened. Victoria's phone rang. She answered it. Whatever she heard made her close her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then her nephew stepped close and said something directly into her ear very quietly, and the color in her face went from composed to something I could only describe as controlled panic. She lowered the phone. She turned and looked straight at me. "What did you do?" Her voice was still quiet, but the composure was cracking at the seams now, and underneath it was something I recognized, the sound of a person who has just realized that the situation they thought they were managing has slipped entirely out of their hands. I raised my eyebrows slightly. "I've been at the hospital since midnight, Victoria. You've seen me." "Ethan was just arrested," she said. I let the words sit in the air between us. I did not smile. I did not react. I just looked at her the way I used to look at a door I was about to breach, calm, focused, already thinking 3 steps ahead. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I walked back toward the surgical wing to ask the nurse about Claire. The surgical wing smelled like antiseptic and recycled air, and the fluorescent lights overhead had the particular quality of hospital lighting, everywhere flat and merciless, making everything look slightly more fragile than it actually was. Or maybe that was just Claire. She was still unconscious when I came in. The room was small and pale with a monitor beside the bed, tracking her heartbeat in a steady green line, and her right hand elevated on a foam wedge and wrapped in so many layers of bandaging that it looked like something abstract, something that didn't belong to a person. I pulled a chair to the left side of the bed, her left side, her uninjured side, and sat down. I reached out and put my hand over hers. Her fingers were cool. I held them anyway. Claire had her mother's hands. Margaret's hands had been quick and precise, the hands of a woman who could repair a broken hinge, sew a torn seam, and make pie crust from scratch in the same afternoon without ever consulting a single instruction. Claire had those same hands a little broader across the knuckles, a little more calloused from the work she did, and I had watched those hands do extraordinary things for 32 years. And now one of them was wrapped up in a foam wedge, and I could not look at it directly for more than a few seconds without something cracking open in the middle of my chest. I pressed my thumb gently against the back of her hand and looked at her face instead. "I found the box," I said quietly. It didn't matter that she couldn't hear me. Saying it out loud helped me believe it was real. "I know what you were doing. I know how long you were doing it." My voice caught on the last word, and I had to press my lips together. Wait until the burning in my throat subsided enough to continue. "You should have told me. I know you had your reasons for not telling me, but you should have." Dr. Patricia Harmon came in at 12:15, a tablet under her arm, and her surgical cap replaced with a regular clip for her hair. She glanced at Claire, checked the monitor reading, and then turned to me with the direct, unvarnished attention that I had already come to trust about her. "The surgical repair went as well as we could have hoped," she said. "We stabilized the metacarpals and addressed the soft tissue damage. The orbital fracture is non-displaced, which means it should heal without additional intervention. But I want to be honest with you about her hand, Mr. Mercer. She paused and I could see her choosing her words with the care of someone who had given this kind of news before. The degree of force required to cause this injury pattern, 4 metacarpals compression-style fracturing across the entire width of the hand, that level of trauma carries long-term implications. Full restoration of function is possible. It is not guaranteed. We won't know the full picture until she begins rehabilitation. My jaw tightened so hard it ached. 4 metacarpals, the entire width of her hand. Someone had done that deliberately with a mechanical tool to my 32-year-old daughter. She documented everything, I said. Dr. Harmon nodded. I have a complete photographic and radiological record. Everything is secured and time-stamped. It will be available to any authorized investigative body that requests it through proper legal channels. She held my gaze for a moment longer. I want you to know that I will not be altering or summarizing these records in any way that reduces their evidentiary value. What happened to your daughter will be documented exactly as I found it. I managed to say thank you. My voice barely worked. Daniel called at 2 in the afternoon, and I stepped into the hallway to take it, leaving the door to Claire's room cracked open so I could see her from where I stood. I have been going deeper into the financial trail, Daniel said without preamble, the way he always talked when he was deep inside a problem. The terminal accounts, the ones the money ends up in after moving through all the layers, I traced the fund registration. Walter, it's not just that Victoria's name appears. The fund predates Ethan's involvement in the company by 7 years. She created the architecture herself. The shell companies, the vendor accounts, the transfer structure, all of it was operational before Ethan ever had signing authority. He inherited a running machine and expanded it, but Victoria built the engine. I leaned my shoulder against the wall and looked through the cracked door at Claire's bandaged hand on its foam wedge. Something cold and very clear settled in the center of my chest. She built it, I repeated. From the ground up, Daniel said. 15 years at minimum. This wasn't opportunism, Walter. This was intention. The woman in the cream blazer who had stood in this hallway 14 hours ago and told me my daughter's injuries were family discipline had spent 15 years constructing a financial fraud operation, and when my daughter had gotten close enough to see it clearly, that woman had made a phone call and men had put Claire's hand in a vice. My hand tightened around the phone until the case creaked. I made myself loosen it. Keep pulling, I said. Document everything you find. Victoria appeared at the end of the hallway at 3:15, with a man I recognized as Barrett Collins walking 2 paces behind her. The Caldwell family attorney, silver-haired, carrying himself with the careful confidence of someone who'd charged $400 an hour and knew it. Victoria had changed her blazer, same cut, different color. She had gone home at some point and come back, which told me she had assessed the situation and decided to stay in the field rather than retreat. She stopped outside Claire's room door. "May I come in?" "No," I said. She accepted that without visible reaction, which was somehow worse than if she had argued. "I'd like to speak with you privately then. There's a family room at the end of the hall." I followed her there because I wanted to see what she would say. The room was small, with a couch the color of old oatmeal and a window that looked out over the hospital parking structure. Barrett Collins posted himself near the door, with his hands clasped in front of him, and Victoria sat across from me and folded her hands in her lap and looked at me with an expression I could only describe as strategic compassion. "I want you to know that the family's priority right now is Claire's recovery," she began. "Whatever differences exist between us, she is Ethan's wife, and she deserves the best possible care. We would like to cover all medical expenses completely without any conditions attached to that offer." She paused to let that land. "In addition, we'd like to set up a recovery fund for her to ensure she has financial security during what will clearly be a difficult rehabilitation period. And naturally, once Ethan's legal situation is resolved, we anticipate things returning to a stable place for everyone." She said it the way a person reads from a document they've memorized smoothly, with the right pauses in the right places, the whole thing engineered to sound generous while meaning something else entirely. I looked at her. My hands rested loose on my thighs. I felt the anger moving through me like current through a wire, real live, looking for somewhere to go, and I held it exactly where it was. "That's very generous," I said. Victoria's shoulders settled slightly. The corner of her mouth moved towards something that wasn't quite a smile. I stood up. "I'll think about it," I said, and I watched her face rearrange itself into something satisfied. Watched her believe right there in that pale little room that she had just handled me, and I turned and walked back down the hallway toward my daughter's room, and I felt the cold clarity in my chest sharpen into something with a definite edge. She thought silence meant surrender. 19 years of working the hardest doors in the world had taught me something different. Silence meant I was still studying. It meant I hadn't moved yet. It meant I was finding the hinges. 2 days after I walked out of that family room at Cedars-Sinai, the rumors started. I know because Rebecca called me at 7:15 on the morning of June 15th and read them to me directly the way she delivered all bad news, without softening, without preamble, just the facts laid out in front of me so I could deal with them. Someone had been busy overnight. A post on a local community forum claimed that Claire's father, a former military man with anger issues, had been pressuring his daughter to leave her husband and turn against his family for months. A second account, different username, same general narrative, appeared on a neighborhood app that covered our part of East LA. The language was careful and just vague enough to stay on the right side of defamation. Not accusations, just concerns the way a knife is just a kitchen tool until someone decides otherwise. "They're trying to reframe you," Rebecca said. "Make you the aggressor before you have a chance to establish yourself as anything else. It's a standard playbook. Introduce doubt. Early, make any evidence you present. Later, look like it comes from a vendetta rather than facts." "What do we do about it?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, and her voice was firm on it. "You respond to none of it. You contact no one. You let me handle anything that comes through legal channels. The moment you engage with any of this publicly, you hand them exactly what they want." I hung up and went to the shop. Working with my hands has always been the way I think. Not the work itself, the rhythm of it, the physical reality of metal under your fingers. The way a problem that seems impossible from the outside reveals its logic, once you're close enough to see where the tolerances are. I was in the middle of a storm door frame I'd been fabricating for a client in Pasadena when the knock came at the front. 2 officers, one I recognized from the precinct that covered our street, the other was younger, with a notepad already out. "Mr. Mercer." The older one had a face I'd seen before, not hostile, just professionally careful. "We received a tip this morning about a possible unregistered firearm on this property. We have a warrant to search the premises." I held out my hand. "Let me see it." He passed me the document. I read every line. It was properly issued, signed by a duty judge at 6:47 that morning, specific in its scope, the shop building, and the attached storage area. Everything in order. I stepped back and let them in. Then I walked to the corner of the shop and called Rebecca. She picked up before the second ring. "What happened?" "Police are here with a search warrant," I said. "Tip about an unregistered firearm." I heard the sharp intake of breath and then the sound of her already moving, already thinking. "Don't touch anything. Don't go into the storage area. Stand where they can see you and don't leave the building. I'm on my way." Rebecca arrived in 14 minutes, which told me she had driven in a way her parking tickets would reflect later. By that time, the officers had found a handgun wrapped in a shop rag tucked behind a shelving unit in the rear storage room. Neither officer's expression gave anything away, but I watched their body language, the slight change in posture that meant they had found what they were looking for, and my stomach went cold and flat. I had never seen that firearm before in my life. Rebecca stepped in, assessed the room in 3 seconds, and positioned herself between me and the officers with the practiced ease of someone who had done this many times. "My client has a statement," she said. "He has never owned, purchased, or handled that weapon. He is fully cooperative with this investigation and requests that all chain of custody procedures be followed precisely from this point forward." The older officer looked at me. "Mr. Mercer is there. Anyone who might have had access to this storage area recently? The area is accessible from the rear alley," I said. "I don't keep it locked during shop hours." After they left with the weapon bagged and tagged, Rebecca and I stood in the storage room doorway, and she crossed her arms and looked at the shelving unit where it had been found. And the expression on her face was not worry. It was the look of someone who had just been handed exactly what they needed. "They made a mistake," she said quietly. "A significant one." "How so?" "Because now we have documentation that someone planted evidence on your property. That's obstruction of justice, Mr. Mercer. Federal charge. And if we can prove who did it." She left the sentence open, which was more effective than finishing it. I walked 2 houses down and knocked on Frank Holloway's door. Frank Holloway was 68 years old, retired, a man who had spent 40 years as a mechanic and whose hands showed every year of it, thick-fingered, permanently stained at the knuckles, with grease that soap had long since given up on removing. He had 4 security cameras on his property, a habit he'd developed after someone had backed into his truck in the alley 3 years ago and driven off. He did not trust the world to be honest with him, and had taken practical steps to address that. "Walter!" He opened the door wide. He had already heard something was going on. News moved fast on our block. "Come in. You want coffee?" "I need to look at your camera footage," I said. "Specifically the rear alley, last 48 hours. Frank's eyes sharpened. He nodded once and led me to the spare bedroom he used as an office where 4 monitor screens showed live feeds from his cameras. He pulled up the archive footage from the rear alley camera and started walking it back. We found it at 2:18 in the morning 2 days prior. A black SUV rolled slowly into the alley from the north end and stopped behind my storage room. The image was clear enough Frank's cameras were better than most, and I could see the driver's side door open, a figure step out cross to my storage room, door disappear inside for approximately 4 minutes, and return to the vehicle empty-handed. I pulled out my phone and found the photograph I had taken of the license plate. The night Miles had shown up at Cedars Sinai, the same black SUV idling at the hospital curb while my daughter was still in surgery. The same vehicle they had used that first night and used again 2 nights later to plant a gun in my storage room. The plates matched. Something hot moved through my chest and then settled into something cold and very precise. My voice was steady when I spoke. "Frank, I need a copy of this footage, and I need you to tell me if you have anything else on Caldwell Logistics." Frank looked at me for a long moment, then scratched the back of his neck. "Funny you mention that," he said. "I've been meaning to show you something." He crossed to a filing cabinet in the corner and opened the second drawer. "I used to do maintenance work for their fleet, 18 months, maybe 2 years back. They've got vehicles listed as disposed of in their records. I know because I've seen the paperwork my buddy showed me, sold decommissioned off the books." He pulled out a manila folder, thick with receipts, and set it on the desk in front of me. Except I was still servicing those same vehicles 8-9 months after the disposal dates. Oil changes, brake work, tire rotations. He tapped the folder. "Got every invoice right here." I looked at the folder. I looked at the freeze frame on Frank's monitor, the SUV, the figure my storage room door. The Caldwells had just handed me 2 more hinges. Frank's folder went straight to Rebecca, and Rebecca spent the rest of the afternoon building what she called a Foundation 3 independent evidentiary threads that existed completely apart from each other. Claire's financial data from the flash drive, Frank's maintenance invoices proving the ghost assets, the security footage showing the SUV behind my storage room plates matching the vehicle Miles had driven to the hospital. 3 separate sources, 3 separate chains of custody, none of them dependent on the others to be valid. "This is how you build a case that doesn't fall down," Rebecca told me, spreading the documents across my kitchen table. "Each piece stands alone. Even if a defense attorney attacks one, the other 2 hold." Daniel nodded from across the table. "They handed us the 3rd piece themselves when they planted that gun. People who think they're untouchable get sloppy," Rebecca said. "They've been untouchable for 15 years. That does something to a person's judgment." I left them working and drove to the hospital. The evening light over Los Angeles was the color it gets in June, amber and hazy, the kind of light that makes the city look softer than it is. I parked and walked through the familiar sliding doors past the nursing station, where Cameron Doss gave me a small nod, and down the corridor to Claire's room. She was awake. Not fully, her eyes were at half-mast, heavy with medication, blinking slowly against the light. But when I came through the door, she turned her head toward me, and something in her face shifted. Recognition. Relief. The particular way a child looks at a parent when they have been afraid and the person they needed most has finally walked into the room. My throat closed completely. I crossed to her left side and pulled the chair close and sat down and took her hand, and she curled her fingers around mine with a grip that was weak but deliberate, and I had to press my lips together hard and look at the ceiling for a moment, because I was not going to fall apart in front of her. She needed me steady. I could fall apart later in the truck where no one could see it. "Hey, sweetheart," I managed. Her lips moved. Her voice came out as a dry whisper, rough from the breathing tube they'd used during surgery. "Dad, I'm here," I said. "I've been here." She blinked. Her eyes moved to her bandaged right hand on its foam wedge, and something crossed her face, a flinch, a flash of grief so raw and unguarded that it hit me like a physical impact in the center of my chest. Then she pulled her gaze back to me, and I could see her working to focus, pushing through the medication fog, with the same stubborn determination she'd had since she was 4 years old, and decided she was going to learn to ride a bike in one afternoon, no matter how many times she fell. Her fingers tightened around mine. "Samuel," she whispered. I leaned closer. "What?" Her jaw worked. She swallowed with effort, and her voice came out thin but clear. "Samuel Price." A pause. Each word cost her something. "Find him." I kept my voice even. "Who is Samuel Price, Claire?" But her eyes were already closing again, the medication pulling her back under before she could answer, her grip on my hand going loose. Within 30 seconds, her breathing had evened out into sleep. I sat there for a long time, without moving, her hand still resting in mine, the monitor beside her tracing its steady green line across the screen. My mind was running fast and quiet, the way it did when a problem had just revealed an entirely new dimension. Samuel Price. She had risked everything to say that name before she went under again. That meant it mattered more than anything else she could have said. I walked back to the nursing station and found Rebecca's number and called her while I was still in the corridor. She answered on the first ring. I said the name. The pause on her end lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough to tell me she recognized it, and when she spoke again, her voice had dropped into a register I hadn't heard from her before. "Walter," she said carefully. "6 years ago, Caldwell Logistics filed a missing persons report on a former employee. His car was found in a drainage canal on the east side of the county. There was no body." Another pause. "His name was Samuel Price." Rebecca had more by morning. She called at 6:42, while I was already dressed and standing at the kitchen counter, too wound up to sit, too tired to do anything useful. 6 years ago, Samuel Price had been the internal auditor at Caldwell Logistics, the person responsible for reviewing the company's own financial records and flagging irregularities. He had held the position for 3 years. Then, on a Tuesday night in November, his car had been found at the edge of a drainage canal on the eastern outskirts of Los Angeles County. Driver's side door open, keys still in the ignition. No Samuel Price. The sheriff's department had worked the case for 4 months. No body was recovered. No evidence of foul play was conclusively established. The file had eventually been reclassified as a presumed accidental drowning and shelved. "Claire left an address in the notebook," Rebecca said. "Page 41. I missed it the first time because she wrote it in the margin very small next to a column of account numbers. I had the notebook in front of me before she finished the sentence. Page 41, bottom margin. Pencil the handwriting slightly smaller than her normal size, the way Claire wrote when she was being careful about something she didn't want to be obvious. An address in Fresno. "I'm going alone," I said. Rebecca started to object. I had already picked up my keys. The drive to Fresno from East Los Angeles takes just under 4 hours on a clear morning, straight up the 5 through the Central Valley. I have made that drive many times over the years, and I have never once found it beautiful. It is flat and agricultural and relentless, the kind of landscape that measures distance honestly, without offering anything to look at while you cover it. I was grateful for that this morning. I didn't want scenery. I wanted the miles to go by, and my mind to stay quiet, and I wanted to knock on whatever door was at the end of this address and find out if my daughter had nearly gotten herself killed for a ghost or for a man. The address was a second-floor apartment in a low building, set back from a quiet street in a part of Fresno that had neither good nor bad qualities worth mentioning, the kind of neighborhood that exists specifically to not be noticed. The parking lot held a dozen cars none knew, and the exterior staircase was metal and practical, the kind that announced your approach with every step. I knocked. 30 seconds. Then the sound of movement inside, careful measured the way a person moves when they are deciding whether to answer before they commit to it. The door opened 6 inches, chain still on. The man looking at me through the gap was 58 years old, though he looked older than that. Medium height, gray at the temples, with a particular leanness of someone who had been eating functionally rather than well for a long time. His eyes were sharp and cautious and exhausted all at once, the eyes of a man who had been waiting for a knock on his door for 6 years, without ever being sure whether it would be one he wanted to answer. I held up the photograph I had taken of Claire's right hand at the hospital, the one showing the extent of the bandaging, the elevation wedged the IV line. I held it where he could see it through the gap, and I did not say anything. Samuel Price looked at the photograph. His jaw tightened. His hand on the edge of the door went rigid, knuckles pressing white against the wood, and for a moment his eyes closed and his whole face contracted with something that was too complicated to be just one thing: guilt and grief and recognition, all arriving at the same instant. He took the chain off. The apartment was small and deliberately sparse: a couch, a table, 2 chairs, a single shelf of paperback books. No computer, no television, nothing with a screen. The kitchen counter held a coffee maker and a jar of instant oatmeal. There was no clutter anywhere, no accumulation of the objects that collect naturally around a person who intends to stay somewhere. This was the living space of a man who had learned to exist without leaving traces. "She found me 3 weeks ago," Samuel said. He was standing near the window, not sitting like he needed to be able to move quickly if he decided to. His voice was low and controlled, but there was a tremor underneath it that he was working to keep in check. "She came here, sat in that chair right there, told me what she had found and what she needed from me." He pressed 2 fingers against his mouth for a moment, steadying himself. "I told her I needed time to think. She said she understood. She left me her number." His voice broke on the last word, and he turned toward the window so I couldn't see his face. His shoulders rose and fell once hard. 3 weeks. I spent 3 weeks thinking about it, and now she's in a hospital bed because I didn't move fast enough. "And this is not on you," I said. He turned back. His eyes were wet at the corners, and his jaw was set hard against it the way a man looks when he is furious at himself for showing emotion and showing it anyway. "She found me through a guy I knew before," he said. "Old friend from before Caldwell. We grew up together. He's been in Bakersfield for 20 years. He didn't know anything. He just knew I was alive, and he kept that to himself because I asked him to." Samuel wiped the back of his hand roughly across one eye. "Caldwell doesn't know about him. They never would have looked there. How have you been living?" I asked. "Cash," he said flatly. "I do HVAC work, small jobs, private homeowners, word of mouth only. No bank account, no credit card, no phone registered to my name. If you don't exist in a database, you're very difficult to find." He pulled in a breath. "I watched 3 people try to rebuild their lives after Caldwell destroyed them. I knew what I'd found inside those books. I knew what would happen if they found out I'd found it." He crossed to the kitchen counter and opened the cabinet above the coffee maker. On the top shelf behind a box of crackers was a hard drive in a Ziploc bag, the same kind of bag Claire had used for the flash drive in the box. He set it on the table between us. "I copied everything before I ran," Samuel said, and his voice had steadied into something flat and deliberate, a man making a decision out loud so he couldn't take it back. 3 years of their original records, the accounts before Ethan ever touched them, the transfers Victoria authorized directly, the companies she set up. He looked at the hard drive, then at me. 6 years I've been sitting on this, waiting for someone to come through that door who wasn't going to make things worse. He finally looked up and met my eyes directly for the first time. "What do you need?" he asked. "Before I tell you what Victoria did next, and I promise you, she made a mistake that would cost her everything, drop a number in the comments right now. Just the number 8. Let me know you're still here with me, because what's coming is the moment this whole thing started to turn. And if you're watching this on Revenge, Dad, welcome. Stay close." Quick note, this story contains some fictional elements woven in for storytelling purposes. If that's not for you, no hard feelings, you can step away now. But if you're staying, I think you'll want to see how this ends. I told Samuel I needed 2 things from him: his testimony when the time came, and the hard drive. He picked the drive up off the table and held it for a moment, turning it over in his hands the way a person handles something they've carried alone for a very long time and are not entirely sure they're ready to put down. His knuckles were taut. His breathing was careful and deliberate. Then he placed it in my palm and closed my fingers around it. "Don't let them bury it again," he said. His voice was rough at the edges, scraped clean of everything except the thing he meant. I drove back to Los Angeles with the drive on the passenger seat and Samuel's words sitting somewhere behind my sternum where I couldn't reach them. 4 hours down the 5. The Central Valley going dark around me, the city lights building on the horizon the way they always did. Gradual then, all at once, like something that had been patient for a very long time. Rebecca was still at my kitchen table when I walked in at 9 that night, her legal pad covered in 3 colors of ink, and her reading glasses pushed up into her hair. Daniel sat across from her with his laptop open, and a cold cup of coffee he hadn't touched in an hour. They both looked up when I set the hard drive on the table. Rebecca picked it up, immediately examined it, set it down with the careful reverence of someone who understood exactly what they were holding. "They Samuel's data plus Claire's data," Daniel said. "Together, they span 15 years. "I know," I said. "I'll explain everything he told me. But first, what did I miss?" Rebecca pulled off her glasses. "I spoke with the lead agent at FBI Field Office LA this afternoon. The arrest on Ethan opened the formal investigation wider. They want Samuel's testimony, and they want the original financial records. With both, the case against Victoria becomes, in the agent's words, airtight." She paused. "However, federal cases move at their own pace. We are talking weeks before additional charges are filed and warrants are extended." "Weeks," I repeated. "The law moves carefully when it moves well," she said. "We do this right, or we do it over." Daniel leaned forward. "There's something else. Barrett Collins sent a formal cease and desist this afternoon." He slid the document across the table. "Caldwell's legal team is claiming you've been harassing family members, interfering with a private legal matter, and making defamatory statements. It's a pressure tactic. They want to slow you down and put you on the defensive." Rebecca's already drafting the response. I read the letter once, set it down, and felt the particular kind of anger that doesn't flare up, but settles in, cold and permanent and useful. "Let them file whatever they want," I said. That night, I ate something I didn't taste and went to bed without sleeping, and lay in the dark listening to the neighborhood and thinking about the 15-year span of financial records now sitting in 2 separate drives on my kitchen table. Claire had built her half from the inside, one document at a time, over 8 months, knowing the whole time what it might cost her. Samuel had built his half in a single desperate night 6 years ago, and then carried it alone into a life without a name. 2 people had done extraordinary things, and I had almost been too late to find either of them. My phone buzzed at 11:47. The number was Miles Garrettson's. I recognized it because I had looked it up 3 days ago and noted it the way I noted everything, precisely, without assuming I'd need it, and without assuming I wouldn't. The message read, "Bring Samuel to me. What happened to Claire ends here." I read it twice. Then I called Daniel. He was at my door in 20 minutes, still in the clothes he'd been wearing at the kitchen table, which meant he had gone back to the hotel around the corner and not actually slept either. He took my phone, read the message, and set it on the counter with the particular careful stillness of someone who understood the significance of what they were looking at. "Give me an hour," he said. He sat at my kitchen table with his laptop and worked in the focused, unhurried way that I had watched him work since we were both in our 30s, doing very different kinds of problem solving in very different kinds of places. 45 minutes later, he turned the screen toward me. "The message was composed on a device registered to a Caldwell Logistics corporate account," he said. "Not Miles's personal phone, a company-issued device registered under the corporate umbrella routed through his number. Whoever sent this thought that using Miles as an intermediary was enough distance. It wasn't." He pointed to the metadata on the screen. "This is traceable, and the content demanding you produce a witness who is material to an active federal investigation constitutes witness tampering under 18 United States Code, Section 1512, federal felony." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Victoria had been careful for 15 years. 15 years of shell companies and intermediaries and routed payments and a bought judge keeping the lid on everything. And then my daughter had gotten close enough to threaten it all, and the careful woman had made a series of decisions that were getting sloppier with every one that followed the last. "She confirmed Samuel is alive," I said, "in writing, on a traceable device." Daniel nodded. "She just told us she knows exactly who we have and exactly why she's afraid of him." I forwarded the message to Rebecca with a single line. "Need you to see this tonight." Her response came back in 4 minutes, already on it. "Don't reply to that number." I set my phone down on the counter and looked out the kitchen window at the dark street and thought about what came next. The law was moving. The evidence was building. But there was a piece still missing. Not a document, not a recording, not a financial record. Something else? Something that would make Victoria understand in a way no filing could accomplish that the walls she had built around herself for 15 years were already coming down. I turned back to Daniel. "Tell me about Robert Hargrove," I said. Daniel looked at me across the kitchen, and something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, but the look of a man who had been waiting to hear a particular name spoken, and had just heard it. "Hargrove," he said slowly. "Walter, that man has been retired for 3 years. I know, I said. Daniel poured himself a glass of water and stood at the kitchen counter and told me about Robert Hargrove, the way you tell someone about a battle that ended badly with the particular flatness of a person who has processed the unfairness of it and arrived somewhere on the other side of anger. Hargrove had spent 26 years with the FBI, the last 9 of them, as the special agent in charge of the Los Angeles field office's Financial Crimes Division. He was the kind of investigator, Daniel said, who built cases the way a good engineer builds a bridge from the foundation up. Every component load-tested before the next one was added, no shortcuts taken, because shortcuts were how bridges fell. 12 years ago, Hargrove had opened an investigation into Caldwell Logistics that had taken 2 years of work and the full resources of his team to construct. Victoria Caldwell had been brought in for formal questioning on 3 separate occasions. 4 members of her inner circle had also been interviewed. The case had been, by Daniel's account, the most comprehensive financial fraud investigation the LA field office had mounted in a decade. Then Judge Owen Hartley had signed a closure order, citing insufficient evidence to proceed, and the entire file had been archived. Hargrove tried to push back, Daniel said. He filed internal objections. He requested a review. He was told the judge's determination was final, and that continuing to pursue the matter would constitute harassment of a private citizen. He set his glass down. 6 months after the case was closed, Hargrove applied for early retirement. He was 59 years old. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, the first light of morning was beginning to gray the edges of the window. He quit because of it, I said. He left because staying meant working inside a system that had just told him a bought judge's signature was more valid than 2 years of his work, Daniel said. There's a difference. I thought about that for a moment. Then I said, can Rebecca reach him? I already texted her while you were driving back from Fresno, Daniel said. She knows Hargrove from a conference 3 years ago. Financial fraud law, they were on the same panel. She says he's the kind of man who picks up the phone. Rebecca made the call at 8:15 that morning. Hargrove agreed to meet by 9. He came to my shop, which was his suggestion. He said he preferred to meet in places that weren't restaurants or offices, places where a conversation could look like anything. He was 64 years old, taller than I expected, with the broad shoulders of someone who had once been physically imposing and hadn't entirely stopped being so. His hair was white and cut short, and his handshake was the kind that tells you something true about a person, firm, complete, no performance in it. He sat at the work table I used for drafts and drawings, and Rebecca laid the case out for him in the clear, structured way she presented everything, while Daniel added the financial analysis where it was needed, and I sat across from them and watched Hargrove's face. He listened without interrupting. He asked 2 clarifying questions, both of them precise and aimed at the exact details I would have asked about myself. And then Rebecca slid the page with Samuel Price's name across the table, and something happened to Robert Hargrove's face that I had not expected. He went very still. Not the stillness of a man who didn't recognize the name. The stillness of a man who recognized it so completely that his body needed a moment to absorb the impact of hearing it again after a long time. His jaw set. His eyes moved to the page and stayed there, and he breathed once through his nose, slowly, the way a person breathes when they are deciding how to handle something, before they respond to it out loud. Daniel caught it. I saw his eyes move to me briefly, and I gave the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. Finally, Hargrove looked up. I looked for him, he said. After the case was closed and I was out, I looked for Samuel Price on my own time with my own resources. Not to build a case, I didn't have the authority to build anything anymore, but because he stopped, started again. A man doesn't walk away from his car at a drainage canal unless he's running from something specific enough to leave everything behind. I wanted to know if he was alive. Did you find him? Rebecca asked. No, Hargrove said. He was careful, more careful than most. No financial footprint, no digital trace, nothing. He paused. But I kept the file. Everything from the original investigation, the full 2 years of work. I've had it in my study for 3 years since I retired. My wife thinks it's a case I consult on for a private client. Something moved across his face that was almost a smile, but didn't quite get there. She's not entirely wrong. He looked at me directly, then the way he'd been looking at everyone else, but hadn't looked at me yet, and I understood that he'd been assessing me the whole time, not from suspicion, but from the same habit of careful evaluation that had made him good at what he'd done for 26 years. What do you need from me? He asked. It was the same question Samuel had asked in Fresno, in a small apartment with the curtains drawn. Two different men, who had both been stopped short by the same wall, asking the same question from very different kinds of patients. "I need them to see your face," I said. "That's all. Not testimony, not documents, just your face in the right place at the right time." Hargrove looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded once slowly, like a man closing a door he'd been meaning to close for a very long time. "Tell me when," he said. Rebecca's phone buzzed as we were wrapping up, and she glanced at the screen and her expression shifted in a way I'd learned to pay attention to. Not alarm, but the focused recalibration of someone who has just received unexpected information that changes the geometry of what they were planning. She looked up at me. "Tammy Caldwell," she said. "She wants to meet." The name hung in the air of my shop for a moment. Ethan's younger sister, 29 years old, a woman who had grown up inside the same machine Victoria had built, and had by all accounts learned to navigate it by keeping her head down and her mouth shut. I looked at Rebecca. "Set it up," I said. The coffee shop in Silver Lake was the kind of place that tried very hard to look like it wasn't trying, exposed brick mismatched chairs, a chalkboard menu, with prices that assumed a certain kind of income. Rebecca had chosen it, which meant she had chosen it for a reason. Neutral territory, public enough to be safe, quiet enough to have a real conversation. I sat at a corner table with a clear sightline to the door and watched Tammy Caldwell walk in. She was 29 years old, and she looked younger than that and older than that, simultaneously the particular combination that comes from growing up with money and growing up afraid at the same time. She was slight dark-haired, like her brother, dressed in the kind of careful, understated clothes that people wear when they want to take up as little space as possible. She scanned the room. When she entered, found Rebecca and walked toward her with her arms crossed over her chest, the way people do when they are holding themselves together by conscious effort. She sat down across from Rebecca. Her eyes moved to me once briefly, and I nodded at her, and she looked away. Her hands on the table were shaking, not trembling, shaking visibly the way hands shake when the adrenaline has been running too long and the body is starting to present the bill. She pressed them flat against the tabletop, and that helped some, but not entirely. "I've been sitting on this for 4 days," she said. Her voice was tight and thin. "Since I saw Claire in that hospital room, I walked in to bring flowers because my mother told me to, and I stood there looking at her hand and She stopped. Her jaw worked. Her eyes filled, and she blinked hard twice, refusing to let it happen here. I couldn't finish the sentence I'd been rehearsing. I just left the flowers and walked out and sat in my car in the parking garage for 40 minutes and couldn't make myself start the engine. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "You did the right thing calling me." "I don't know what I did," Tammy said. "I know what I have." She reached into her bag and set a phone on the table between them. Older model. The screen scratched at one corner, the case worn at the edges from handling. "It's my mother's. An old one she replaced it 2 years ago. She thinks she wiped it before she gave it to me to dispose of. She didn't wipe it completely." Rebecca picked it up with 2 fingers careful and set it in an evidence bag she had brought without making a production of producing it. "Why did you keep it?" Rebecca asked. Tammy's chin came up slightly, the first moment of something harder beneath the fear. "Because she used that phone to send me instructions, documents to sign, transfers to authorize, things I didn't understand and was told not to ask about." Her voice steadied as she spoke, like someone who had rehearsed this part. "I kept it because I was afraid that someday someone would look at my signature on those documents and I'd have no way to show that I was told to sign them without being told what they were. I kept it to protect myself, not her." Daniel had the data recovered within 2 hours of us returning to the shop. The phone had not been wiped, it had been reset to factory settings, which is not the same thing, and a man with Daniel's background knew exactly where the difference lived. The messages came back in fragments at first, then in sequence. I was standing at the kitchen counter when Daniel read the first one out loud. "Handle the Claire problem before she takes the books outside. Victoria to Ethan, time-stamped 3 weeks before Claire was admitted to Cedars-Sinai." The second one landed harder. "The old auditor. Make sure that thread stays buried." My hand gripped the edge of the counter so tightly that the pain registered somewhere distant and unimportant. The old auditor. Samuel Price. Buried. She had known he was out there. She had been managing that knowledge for 6 years, paying it forward in the tin can currency of silence and fear. And when Claire had pulled on the same thread, Victoria had done what she always did. She had made a phone call and let other people bear the cost. I walked outside. The evening air in East LA smelled like car exhaust and someone's dinner cooking 3 houses down, and I stood on the sidewalk and looked at the darkening sky and breathed until the thing in my chest that wanted to break something settled back into its corner. Daniel came out and stood beside me. He put his hands in his pockets and looked at the same piece of sky and didn't say anything immediately, which was one of the things I had always valued about him. He understood that some moments needed to be inhabited before they needed to be discussed. After a while I said, "I need someone in the passenger seat." "Hargrove," Daniel said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said, "but not yet. Not until everything else is in place." I went back inside. There was still work to do. We met at my shop the next morning, all 4 of us for the first time in the same room at the same time. Daniel arrived first, already on his 2nd cup of coffee, his laptop open on the work table with 3 windows running simultaneously. Rebecca came 7 minutes later, document bag over one shoulder, legal pad in hand, moving with the focused economy of someone who had already been thinking for 2 hours before she walked through the door. Hargrove came last, punctual to the minute, with the unhurried bearing of a man who had spent decades arriving at difficult situations and had learned that composure was a form of preparation. I had pushed the shop's center work table clear and pulled 4 chairs around it. The morning light came through the high windows at a flat angle, the kind of light that showed everything exactly as it was. There was coffee. There were no pleasantries. We all understood why we were here. Rebecca opened. "We have 3 independent evidentiary threads that are each strong enough to stand alone in a federal proceeding," she said, laying the documents out across the table as she spoke. "Claire's internal financial data, 8 months of documented transactions, tying the shell companies directly to Victoria's fund. Samuel's original records, 3 years of the architecture before Ethan inherited it. Frank Holloway's maintenance invoices proving the ghost asset fraud. On top of that, we have footage of the evidence plant device metadata establishing witness tampering, and Tammy's recovered messages showing direct instruction from Victoria." She paused and looked at each of us in turn. "The FBI has enough. The question now is how we bring Victoria and the people around her to the right place at the right time." Hargrove leaned forward and rested his forearms on the table. "The critical piece," he said, "is location and consent. If we draw them to a meeting, if we call them somewhere, and they come because we orchestrated it, a competent defense attorney will argue entrapment before the jury hears a single fact." His voice was measured and precise, the voice of a man who had watched cases collapse on procedural grounds and was not willing to watch another one. But if they come to a place of their own, choosing on their own initiative in response to information they received through legitimate channels, that's their decision. That's their right, and everything that happens there is on them. "So, we give them a reason to move," Daniel said. "We give them a reason they believe," Hargrove said. "There's a difference." Rebecca was already writing. Barrett Collins is still Caldwell's attorney of record, even if he's been pulling back from active involvement. I send a formal notification through proper legal channels, a letter advising that a material witness in the federal investigation is being relocated outside California for safety reasons prior to formal deposition next Thursday. She looked up. "Victoria gets that information from Collins. It's credible because it comes through a legal channel. It's urgent because it has a deadline, and it tells her exactly what she's afraid of, that Samuel is about to become officially unreachable." "She'll move fast," Daniel said. "She's been moving sloppy for 10 days, I said. "Fast and sloppy together is what we need." Hargrove nodded. "I'll coordinate with the field office through Rebecca. They'll be there on surveillance authority from the existing warrant on the Caldwell investigation. They've had it running for over a year. The moment Victoria moves against you in that lot, that's an overt act on an active federal suspect. Everything they need to move is already in place." He looked at me. "You understand what you're driving into." "I've driven into worse," I said. We worked through the operational details for another hour and a half, timing, positioning, communication contingencies. It was the kind of planning I hadn't done in years, and my body remembered it before my mind caught up the familiar settling of focus that came when the variables were identified and the unknowns were reduced to an acceptable level. Not zero. You never got to zero, but acceptable. By midday, we had what we needed. Rebecca left to draft the Collins letter. Daniel left to coordinate the technical side with the FBI field office contact. Hargrove left with the quiet purposefulness of a man who had just been handed back something that had been taken from him. I drove to the hospital. Claire was more alert than she had been, sitting up slightly, the fog of the heavy pain medication beginning to thin at the edges. Her left hand was resting on the blanket, and her right was still elevated, still bandaged. Still the thing I could only look at for a few seconds at a time without something happening in my chest that I couldn't afford to let happen yet. She watched me pull the chair close and sit down. "You look like you've been sleeping in the shop," she said. Her voice was still rough, but the sharpness was back in her eyes. The particular sharpness that was all Claire, all her mother's daughter, the look that meant she was paying attention to everything and filing it away. "I've been sleeping fine," I said. She gave me the look that meant she knew I was lying and had decided not to press it. "What are you doing, Dad?" I looked at my daughter, at the lines of pain around her eyes, at the careful way she held herself to avoid jarring her right side, at the unbandaged fingers of her left hand that were curled loosely against the blanket, the way they had curled against my hand when she was small and had fallen asleep in the car and I'd carried her inside. "Finding the hinges," I said. Something moved through her expression, not quite a smile, not quite relief, but something in the neighborhood of both. She reached out with her left hand and put it over mine on the arm of the chair, and I turned my palm up and held it. We stayed like that for a while, not needing to fill the space with anything. When I stood to leave, my phone buzzed. Rebecca Miles Garrettson just contacted me. Says he has information about the warehouse. Wants to talk. I read it twice. Miles, the man whose number had been used for Victoria's witness tampering message, the man whose car had been caught on Frank's camera at 2:18 in the morning, the man who had shown up at Cedars-Sinai with a logo on his jacket and left without answering a single question. The first hinge was already moving. I typed back, "Set it up. Tomorrow morning." Then I leaned down and kissed the top of Claire's head and walked out into the hospital corridor, and for the first time in 9 days, I felt the shape of what was coming settle into something clear and definite and close. Miles Garrettson arrived at Rebecca's office at 9 in the morning and looked like a man who had not slept in 4 days, because he had not slept in 4 days. He was 41 years old, and he had the particular appearance of someone whose ordinary life, the mortgage, the car payment, the weekend routine had just been revealed to be built on ground that was not solid. His eyes were red at the rims, his shirt was clean, but he had buttoned it wrong at the collar, and either hadn't noticed or had stopped caring. He sat down across from Rebecca and put his hands on his knees and looked at the table between them, like a man staring into something he could not look away from and could not keep looking at. I sat in the corner. Rebecca had asked if I wanted to wait outside. I had said no. "Start from the beginning," Rebecca said. Her voice was not unkind, but it was direct in the way that left no room for evasion. "Tell me what you were asked to do, and when you were asked to do it." Miles pressed his palms against his thighs and breathed in through his nose. "About 10 days ago, I got a call from one of the security supervisors, a guy named Turson. He told me there was a package that needed to be moved to a storage location." He swallowed hard. He said it was sensitive company documents that needed to be kept off-site temporarily. He gave me an address and a time. 2 in the morning. "And you didn't ask what was in the package," Rebecca said. I asked. Miles's voice cracked on the word, and he stopped and his jaw worked for a moment. "He said it was above my clearance level, and He stopped again. His hands came up off his knees and pressed against his face, fingers digging into his eye sockets, and a sound came out of him that was not quite a sob, but was not far from one. "I needed the job. I have 2 kids. I told myself it was paperwork. I told myself it was nothing." He dropped his hands. His eyes were wet, and his face had the wrecked, exposed quality of a man who had been lying to himself and had finally run out of the energy to keep it up. "I didn't know it was a gun until the next morning when I saw the news about the search. And then I knew, and I didn't know what to do. And then I kept not knowing what to do, and every day I didn't do anything made it worse." Rebecca let him breathe for a moment. Then she said, "The address you delivered to. Can you provide the exact location?" "Yes." "And Turson. Do you know who gave him the instruction?" Miles looked up. His eyes were steady now, the way eyes get when a person has made a decision and is on the other side of it. "It came from above Turson. It always does. Everything in that company that matters comes from one place." He paused. "I think you know where." Rebecca nodded once. She was already writing. "I'm going to explain what cooperation looks like in a federal investigation," she said, "and what it means for your situation. You should understand clearly that nothing I say constitutes a formal agreement that requires the prosecutor's office. But I can tell you that the difference between the person who comes forward and the person who waits to be found is significant. Courts understand it, prosecutors understand it, and juries understand it. Miles nodded. His shoulders dropped by 2 inches, the physical release of a man who had been carrying something alone and had just set it down. After Miles left, Rebecca called the FBI field office and spoke for 11 minutes. When she hung up, she looked at me and said, "Turson is already in their file. They've been watching him for 6 weeks. Miles's account corroborates 3 other pieces of evidence they already had. The obstruction charge is solid." "How solid?" I asked. "Airtight," she said. "And it adds a layer to Victoria's exposure. The gun wasn't just planted, it was planned, coordinated, and authorized up the chain. That's conspiracy to obstruct justice on top of the obstruction itself." By early afternoon, a second thread snapped. Daniel called me at 2:17 to tell me that a former Caldwell logistics accountant, a woman who had left the company 18 months ago, under circumstances she had described to friends as uncomfortable, had reached out to him through a mutual contact. She had seen the news about Ethan's arrest. She wanted to talk before someone else did. She had spent the morning, she said, trying to decide whether loyalty to a former employer or loyalty to herself was the more rational choice, and had concluded that the question answered itself. She confirmed in a recorded call with Daniel and a federal investigator on the line that the transaction records in Claire's data were accurate. She had processed some of them herself. She had been told they were standard vendor payments and had not been encouraged to look closely. She didn't know the full picture, Daniel told me. But what she knew fills in 3 gaps the FBI had in their timeline: the dates, the authorization chain, and one specific transfer that had been manually rerouted. She has the original routing documentation. I was standing in my shop when Daniel told me this, the late afternoon light coming flat through the high windows the way it always did. At this hour, the familiar smell of metal and oil around me. I had built this place with my hands after 19 years of work that I was never allowed to describe to anyone. I had thought this was the end of something complicated when I came here. A simpler life. Doors that held instead of doors that broke. I thought about that for a moment. About the particular irony of a man who built things to last now watching a family's entire architecture fall apart from the inside. My phone buzzed. "Hargrove, everything is positioned. Field office confirmed. They'll be in place 1 hour before you move. Say the word." I set the phone on the workbench and stood there in the quiet of the shop and thought about Claire's hand on her foam wedge, and Victoria's face in the hospital hallway, and Samuel Price in a dim apartment in Fresno, holding a hard drive he'd carried alone for 6 years. I thought about a door I had been studying for 9 days. I picked up the phone and typed back, "Tomorrow night." Then I called Hargrove directly, and when he picked up I said, "I need you in the passenger seat at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. Dressed like you're going nowhere important." Hargrove's answer was immediate. "I'll be there at 7:55. Hargrove was at my door at 7:55, exactly as he had said he would be. He was wearing a plain gray jacket over a dark shirt, and he looked like what he was, a 64-year-old man going somewhere unremarkable on a Thursday evening. That was the point. He got into the passenger seat of my Ford F-250 without comment, adjusted the seat back 2 inches, and put on his seatbelt. I backed out of the driveway and pointed the truck west toward the freeway interchange. We did not talk for the first 15 minutes. The city moved past the windows the way Los Angeles does at 8 in the evening, the streets still carrying the heat of the day, the storefronts lit up in their particular combinations of neon and fluorescent, the freeway running wide and fast in the June dark. I had driven these roads 10,000 times, and they had never felt like this, that particular combination of familiar and completely new that comes when you are doing something ordinary for a purpose that is anything but. Hargrove broke the quiet first. "Black SUV," he said. His voice was the same measured tone he used for everything, as if the information were mildly interesting, rather than confirming what we had both been waiting for. 11 o'clock position, 4 car lengths back. It's been with us since we turned onto the interchange. I checked the mirror. "I see it. Don't change speed," he said. I wasn't going to. We rode for another 2 minutes. Then Hargrove said, "Second one, coming up from the right. It'll merge behind us in about 30 seconds. It did. 90 seconds after that, a third set of headlights appeared from a side street and fell into position behind the second. 3 vehicles now spaced deliberately moving with the practiced coordination of people who had done this before, or been told exactly how to do it by someone who had. My hands were relaxed on the wheel. I had done this before too, in different countries and different vehicles, and with considerably higher stakes, and the body remembered how. The heart rate stayed down. The breathing stayed even. The thinking stayed clear. I took the exit toward the old industrial corridor on the eastern edge of the city, a grid of warehouses and fabrication yards that had been half empty for 15 years. The kind of area that was useful precisely because nothing much happened there after dark. The streets were wide and poorly lit, and there were no businesses open and no pedestrians. Rebecca had identified it 2 days ago. Hargrove had approved it. The FBI had been given the coordinates 24 hours in advance. They had been in position for the past 16 minutes. The lead SUV made its move when I turned onto the main access road. It accelerated past me, cut across, and stopped broadside across the road ahead. Headlights blazing. I brought the truck to a stop 30 feet back and did not reach for anything and did not move quickly. In the mirror, the 2 trailing vehicles had pulled across the road behind me, blocking the exit. Doors opened. I counted as they stepped out 12 people in total, emerging from the 3 SUVs and from the shadow of the building on my left. Some of them I recognized from family events I had attended over 6 years of Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings I had never entirely felt at home in. Others I didn't know, larger men standing with the deliberate looseness of people who expected to be useful in a specific way tonight. Victoria Caldwell stepped out of the rear vehicle. She was wearing the cream-colored blazer. The same one or one exactly like it, I could not be sure, and it didn't matter. Her purse was over her arm. Her posture was what it always was. Composed, precise, carrying itself with the absolute certainty of a woman who had never in 67 years encountered a situation she could not manage. She stood 20 feet from my front bumper and looked at my windshield. A large man came around the side of the lead SUV and walked directly to my driver's side window. He was perhaps 40 thick through the neck and shoulders, with the expression of someone who had decided how this evening was going to go before it started. He raised his fist and brought it down hard on the roof of the truck, and the sound rang through the cab like a hammer on steel. "You think you can touch our people?" His voice was loud enough to hear clearly through the glass, raw with the particular aggression of a man performing for an audience as much as expressing anything genuine. He hit the roof again harder. "Get out of the truck, right now." I did not get out of the truck. I did not raise my voice. I did not reach for anything. I sat exactly where I was, and I looked through the windshield at Victoria Caldwell standing in the headlight wash with her purse over her arm. And I thought about a hospital hallway and a woman in a cream blazer telling me my daughter's injuries were family discipline, and I let that thought move through me and settle and become still. Then I reached for the window control and lowered the glass. The man outside pulled in a breath to keep shouting and stopped. His eyes had gone past me, past my shoulder, to the passenger seat. His mouth stayed open, but the words that had been coming out of it did not come. Something crossed his face that was not anger anymore, something more complicated, something that moved through his expression, the way a cold front moves through a room when a door opens unexpectedly. He took one involuntary step backward. The 2 men nearest him registered his reaction before they registered what had caused it. They looked, and then they looked again the way people do when they see something that takes a second pass to fully process. Victoria Caldwell took 3 steps forward. She was looking at the passenger seat now. Her chin was raised and her eyes were doing the careful work of confirmation, making sure that what she was seeing was what she was actually seeing, and not something her mind had produced from stress or fear. The color in her face went through 2 stages in the space of 4 seconds. First it went careful and controlled, then it went somewhere else entirely. Robert Hargrove looked at Victoria Caldwell through the windshield of my truck with the same measured, unhurried expression he brought to everything and the years between them. 12 years since she had sat across from him in an interview room and walked out believing she had won compressed into nothing. The night around the truck went very quiet. Not the quiet of people who had nothing to say. The quiet of people who understood all at once and from different starting points that the situation they had walked into was not the situation they had planned for. Victoria's lips parted. Her composure, that extraordinary decades maintained composure, developed the first visible crack I had ever seen in it. Her purse slipped 2 inches down her arm before she caught it. Robert Hargrove opened the passenger door and stepped out of the truck. He did it the way he did everything, without hurry, without performance, with the complete physical ease of a man who had walked into difficult rooms for 26 years and had never needed the room to know he was there before he was ready for it to know. He stood beside the truck and put his hands in the pockets of his gray jacket and looked at Victoria Caldwell across 20 feet of cracked asphalt and 12 people who had stopped breathing. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said. His voice carried in the night air without effort. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Victoria stood very still. The purse was back in the crook of her arm. Repositioned, controlled the small recovery of a woman who had spent a lifetime making sure her hands never gave her away. But her face was doing something it had not done in any of the times I had watched her. It was working. Behind the composed surface, something was recalculating furiously, running through scenarios and exits and options the way a mind does when it suddenly understands that the ground has shifted and the map it was using is no longer accurate. She said nothing. So Hargrove continued. "Last time we spoke, you were in an interview room on the 14th floor on Wilshire," he said. "You had 2 attorneys present. You answered 11 questions in 4 hours. He tilted his head slightly. "I always appreciated the discipline of that. Most people can't sustain it. You could." Something moved through the group behind Victoria, a collective shift, the physical manifestation of a dozen people recalibrating simultaneously. The large man who had hammered on my roof had taken 2 full steps back from the truck and was now standing with his arms at his sides, the aggression of 5 minutes ago entirely gone, replaced by something that looked very much like the particular stillness of a person who does not know what they have walked into and is trying very hard to figure it out before they make it worse. "At last time," Hargrove said, and his voice stayed exactly the same, measured unhurried as if he were discussing something of moderate professional interest. "We were missing a witness." He let that sit in the air for a moment. The night around us was very warm and very quiet, and the distant sound of the freeway was the only thing moving. "This time," he said, "we're not." Victoria Caldwell looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at me, still sitting in the truck with the window down, and something crossed her face that I had never seen there before. Not fear exactly, but its close relative, the expression of a person who has just understood the full dimensions of a situation they thought they were managing. Her eyes moved across the group around her. She was reading them the way I had seen her read rooms before assessing, calculating, deciding who was useful and who was a liability. And then she made the mistake. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was a single word spoken in a voice that had dropped below its usual register, the voice of a woman whose internal architecture had just sustained a crack she couldn't entirely shore up in time. "Samuel." The word left her mouth and entered the air and could not be taken back. The effect was immediate, and it was not the effect she would have chosen. 3 of the people standing behind her turned to look at each other, not with recognition, with a specific uneasy confusion of people who have just heard a name in a context that suggests they should know what it means and have realized simultaneously that they do not, that there is something they have never been told, that the woman they have followed here tonight, whose judgment they have trusted, whose version of events they have accepted without examination, has been carrying a piece of information that she chose not to share with them. A man to Victoria's left, one of the older ones, a cousin I had met once at a Caldwell Company event 3 years ago, said quietly, "Who's Samuel?" Victoria did not answer him. She was looking at Hargrove, and Hargrove was looking back at her with the patient, settled expression of a man who has waited a very long time for a particular moment, and has found that it arrived exactly as he expected. It would not with drama, not with noise, but with the quiet, irrevocable finality of a door coming off its hinges. He did not answer her question. He didn't need to. Her question was its own answer. In asking it, she had told every person standing in that lot that Samuel Price was real, that he was significant, that she knew who he was and why his name mattered, and that she had been managing that knowledge for 6 years without letting any of them near it. The cousin said it again louder, this time directed at the group. "Who is Samuel?" 2 people on the far end of the arc began moving away from Victoria, not running, just shifting their weight, creating distance, the unconscious physical response of people who have sensed that standing close to something is about to become a different kind of problem than they signed up for. Then the lights came. They arrived from 3 directions simultaneously, from the access road to the north, from the gap between the warehouse buildings to the east, from the service road that ran along the southern fence line, and they were not the uncertain sweep of approaching headlights, but the deliberate organized illumination of vehicles that had been waiting in position and had now been given the word to move. Federal sedans, 4 of them. And behind them, a California Highway Patrol unit with its light bar painting the lot in pulses of blue and red. They positioned themselves in a perimeter that was not aggressive but was absolute. Every exit, covered every sightline, accounted for the kind of tactical deployment that communicated without ambiguity that the geometry of the situation had permanently changed. An agent stepped out of the lead sedan and held up credentials and said in a clear, carrying voice that everyone present should remain where they were and that he would explain the situation to anyone who wanted it explained. 2 of the Caldwell group immediately raised their hands and announced that they wanted it explained. Victoria did not move. She stood at the center of what remained of her assembled force and looked to the federal vehicles and the agents moving purposefully around the perimeter of the lot, and her face had gone through everything it was going to go through and arrived somewhere beyond expression, the blankness of a person who has run out of available responses. Then she looked at me. I had gotten out of the truck by then and was standing beside it, my hands loose at my sides, watching her watch me. Her purse was still over her arm. Her blazer was still perfectly in place. The surface was still intact all the way down to the presentation of a woman who had walked through the wrong door, dressed for a different evening. Her voice, when it came, was low and controlled and furious in the way that fury sounds when it has nowhere left to go. "You said you'd do nothing," she said. I looked at her across the asphalt, across 12 years of her certainty that she was untouchable, across 9 days of her believing that a quiet man meant a defeated one. "No, ma'am," I said. "I said nothing. There's a difference." The agents worked the perimeter with the efficient, unhurried professionalism of people who had prepared for exactly this and found it unfolding as prepared. Positions were held. Names were taken. Miranda rights were read to 4 people in the first 10 minutes, Victoria among them. She stood and received them the way she received everything, without visible reaction, without the flinch or the tears or the collapse that people imagine accompanies that particular moment. She looked at the agent reading her rights with the focused attention of a woman cataloging information for later use. And when he finished, she said clearly and without hesitation that she would not be making any statements without her attorney present. Even now, even here, the discipline held. I stood beside my truck and watched and felt something that was not satisfaction and not relief, but was somewhere between them, the particular exhaustion that comes at the end of something that has taken everything you had when the outcome has gone the way it needed to go, and your body is only now beginning to understand that it can stop. Hargrove came to stand beside me. He put his hands in his pockets and looked at the scene unfolding in front of us. The agents, the Caldwell family members, in various stages of cooperation and resistance. The vehicles with their lights still running the lot that had looked like an ambush 20 minutes ago, and now looked like exactly what it was. "She's going to fight it," he said. "Every step, every motion, every filing. She'll spend every dollar she has, and a few she doesn't, trying to find a crack in the case." "I know," I said. "There isn't one," he said. "Not this time." We stood there for another moment. Then, one of the federal sedans, the one that had been parked furthest from the action, back near the service road, the one I had noted when the lights came on and then set aside because there was other things requiring attention, opened its rear door. Samuel Price got out. He was wearing the same kind of clothes he'd had on in Fresno Plain Dark Practical. He stood beside the vehicle and looked across the lot, and his eyes found Victoria Caldwell, the way eyes find what they have been looking for without consciously searching. And he went very still. Victoria was 20 feet away, an agent at her elbow, her purse still over her arm, by force of habit or force of will or both. She had not seen him yet. She was speaking quietly to the agent beside her, the beginning of whatever careful, lawyerly stonewalling she had decided would serve her best in the next few hours. Then something shifted in her peripheral vision, and she turned her head. Samuel Price stood in the light of the federal vehicles and looked at Victoria Caldwell, and Victoria Caldwell looked at the man she had paid to stay buried for 6 years, the man whose silence she had purchased with $800 a month wired to a post office box, the man she had written off as a solved problem, and her face did the thing it had not done through everything else tonight. Her chin dropped, just slightly, just by a degree or two, but on Victoria Caldwell, whose chin had never dropped in the 45 minutes I had been watching her tonight, it was as loud as a shout. Samuel did not move toward her. He did not say anything. He stood where he was and let his existence do the work because his existence was the argument and it was complete and sufficient and required no elaboration. An agent touched Victoria's elbow, and she turned away and Samuel watched her go, and his jaw was tight and his eyes were wet at the corners, and he pressed his lips together once and breathed through his nose the careful physical discipline of a man holding himself together in a public place after a very long time of holding himself together in private ones. Hargrove left my side and walked toward Samuel. They stood together for a moment, and I watched Hargrove put his hand briefly on the younger man's shoulder and say something I couldn't hear, and Samuel nodded once, and that was all. I leaned against the side of my truck. The lot was quieter now. Some of the Caldwell group had already been separated, were already sitting in the backs of vehicles, or standing with agents, some talking rapidly, some not talking at all. The geometry of the thing had resolved into the particular organized aftermath that follows when something large and held together for a long time finally comes apart. The pieces scattered the shape of what it had been visible only in the outline of where they had fallen. I thought about Margaret. I don't know why that was the moment she arrived in my mind, but she did not. The Margaret of the hospital. Not the Margaret of the last months, but the Margaret of years earlier, standing in my shop on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and one of her rare, unhurried smiles, telling me that the problem with the way I approached things was that I was always looking at what a structure was built to resist instead of what it couldn't survive. She had been talking about a gate I was redesigning at the time. She had not known she was talking about anything else. She had been right about both. I pushed off from the truck and walked around to the driver's side. The drive back to Los Angeles took 40 minutes. Hargrove rode with me as far as the freeway, and then I dropped him at a gas station where his own car was parked, and we shook hands without ceremony, and he drove north and I drove west, and the city came back around me the way it always did. Gradual, then all at once the lights building on the horizon, like something patient that had been waiting. I was 2 miles from home when my phone rang. The number was Cedars-Sinai. My chest tightened for one involuntary second, before I answered the reflex of a man who had received a call from that number 9 days ago, and had not entirely stopped bracing for the next one. Mr. Mercer. Cameron Doss's voice. Not the tight, rapid voice of 9 days ago. Something different, lighter, careful with its lightness, the way people are when they are carrying good news and trying not to drop it. I wanted to call you myself. Your daughter woke up about an hour ago, fully alert. She asked the night nurse where you were, and the nurse told her you were out and would be back. And then, Claire said, Cameron paused and I could hear the smile in it. She said, tell him whatever door it was, I hope it opened. I pulled to the side of the road. I sat in the truck on a quiet street 2 miles from my house with the engine running and the city lights reflecting off the hood, and I pressed the heel of my hand against my mouth and I let it happen. The thing I had been holding back since 11:03 on a Thursday night when a phone had rung while I was checking a lock on a shop door. It came out of me in one long, ragged exhale that left my eyes burning and my chest hollow and clean. Then I put the truck in drive and went to see my daughter. The days that followed did not arrive all at once. They came in pieces the way the full picture of something large always comes, one edge visible first, then another, then the space between them filling in until you could finally see the whole shape of what had been there all along, waiting to be understood. The first piece came from Rebecca 2 days after the lot. She called in the morning while I was at the hospital, sitting in the chair beside Claire's bed, and I stepped into the hallway to take it. Rebecca's voice had the particular quality it got when she was delivering information she had been holding carefully and was now ready to set down. In Samuel's records and Claire's records, she said, we've had analysts working through them since Tuesday. When you put the two sets side by side, his 3 years and her 8 months, they create a continuous chain of documentation that runs 15 years without a gap. She paused. Victoria didn't just oversee the system, she architected it. Every structural decision, every shell company formation, every account origination, it all traces back to decisions made when she was the sole operational authority at Caldwell Logistics, before Ethan was old enough to have signing authority. What Ethan did was expand what she handed him. But the foundation, every load-bearing element of it, is hers. I stood in the hospital corridor and looked at the wall and thought about 15 years. About the number of people who had lost businesses, lost livelihoods, lost years of their working lives to a system one woman had decided to build, because she could, and because she had found early on that the consequences for people like her were theoretical rather than real. Until now. Judge Hartley, I said, referred to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation yesterday, Rebecca said. Separate matter from the Caldwell case handled by a different team, but the referral is based directly on documentation in Claire's records, the payment trail connecting his account to the Caldwell shell structure. The judge who signed the closure order 10 years ago, the order that ended Hargrove's investigation, is now the subject of a federal criminal inquiry of his own. A beat. It turns out the wall had a door. I went back into Claire's room and sat down and did not say anything for a while, and Claire, who was sitting up more fully now, her color better, the sharpness fully restored to her eyes, watched my face and waited. It's falling, I said finally. She nodded. She already knew. Barrett Collins withdrew from representation of the Caldwell family the following week, citing a conflict of interest that he declined to specify, but that Rebecca could have specified in considerable detail. He filed the withdrawal on a Thursday morning and was by multiple accounts out of his office by noon. The week after that, the cooperation agreements began. Miles Garrettson was first his formal agreement signed and filed, with the reduced charge of accessory, after the fact, a significant step down from the obstruction charge he had been facing. In exchange, his full account of the evidence plant, including the name of every person who had given him instructions, entered the federal record. A Caldwell family member, one of the cousins who had been standing in the lot that night and had raised his hand to hear the situation. Explained came forward 4 days later with his own attorney and his own account of financial transactions he had been asked to facilitate without being told their purpose. His cooperation was, Rebecca said, genuinely useful in ways that went beyond what they had already documented. Then a former logistics manager, then an accountant who had processed transactions she had been told not to examine. Then a man who had driven certain vehicles on certain routes at certain times and had understood, if he was honest with himself, that the routes and the times were not accidental. Each one came forward for the same reason. Each one was afraid that the person beside them had already said more than they had. Each one understood in the particular clarity that descends when a system begins to collapse that the only thing worse than being the second person to cooperate is being the last. The system ate itself, not because we were stronger than it, because when the fear that had held it together started flowing in the wrong direction, there was nothing underneath to hold. I was in the hospital room the morning the LA Times ran its first full account of the case. Claire had been moved to a regular room, by then the surgical wing behind her, the rehabilitation schedule beginning to take shape around the slow, careful work of recovering what her right hand could do. I folded the paper to the relevant page and set it on her blanket without comment. She read it. I watched her face move through it, the particular compression around her eyes when she reached the paragraphs about Victoria, the small exhale when she reached the section about Samuel's testimony, the stillness when she read her own name. When she finished, she set the paper down on the blanket and looked at the wall for a moment, and then she turned to me, and her eyes were bright and wet, and she did not look away from me when she said, "I was so afraid, Dad, the whole 8 months, every single day." My throat closed. "I know," I said. "I didn't tell you because I thought—" Her voice caught and she pressed her lips together and tried again. "I thought if I told you, you'd want to handle it, and I needed to handle it myself. I needed to know I could." She looked down at her bandaged right hand on its foam wedge, and something moved through her expression that was grief and stubbornness. In equal measure, the exact combination I had watched her deploy since she was 6 years old, and had decided she was going to figure out a problem without help, regardless of how long it took. "I almost got it right." "You got it exactly right," I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended. "The box, the drive, Samuel. You did all of it right, Claire. Every piece." She looked at me for a long moment. Her left hand found mine on the arm of the chair, and held it, and I turned my palm up and held it back, and we stayed like that, while the morning light came through the hospital window and lay across the floor in long, flat bars, and the corridor outside went about its ordinary business. Then she said quietly, "Is Tammy okay?" "She's okay," I said. She did the right thing. Claire nodded slowly, taking that in. Her thumb moved once across the back of my hand. "Good," she said. I was worried about her. Another pause. She wasn't like the rest of them. She just didn't know how to leave. I thought about that. About all the different ways people stay in things they shouldn't stay in, and all the different things that finally move them. She left when it mattered, I said. Claire considered that for a moment with the serious evaluating expression she had brought to difficult questions since she was small. Then she nodded satisfied and settled back against her pillow. Outside the window, Los Angeles went about its morning. Victoria Caldwell was sentenced on a Thursday in September. 14 years, federal. The judge, not Hartley, who was by then the subject of his own proceedings in a different courtroom, read the sentence in a voice that carried neither satisfaction nor apology, the voice of a system doing what it was built to do when all its components were functioning as intended. 14 years for wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and witness tampering. The sentencing memorandum ran to 61 pages. Ethan received 10 years on a separate docket, having cooperated partially in the final weeks of the investigation, in a manner that his attorneys argued, and the prosecutor conceded, had provided some incremental value. The men who had put their hands on Claire in that warehouse received sentences ranging from 7 to 9 years each, the variation depending on the degree of their individual participation and the speed with which they had found their way to cooperation agreements. Caldwell Logistics was placed into receivership. Its assets were frozen, pending civil forfeiture proceedings. The shell companies dissolved like paper in water. Tammy received full immunity. She had been complete, and the prosecutor's office had made clear in the agreement that her cooperation had been foundational rather than supplementary. She was 29 years old and had the rest of her life in front of her unencumbered for the first time by a family structure she had been born into rather than chosen. I read about the sentencing on my phone in the shop, the same way I had read most of the case developments over the preceding weeks, standing at the workbench with a cup of coffee going cold beside me, the familiar sounds of the shop around me, the smell of metal and oil that had become over the years the smell of my own steadiness. I read the article twice. Then I set the phone down and picked up my coffee and drank it cold and did not feel what I expected to feel. What I felt was tired. Profoundly, completely down to the bone tired, the way you feel when something that has been taking everything you have for a long time finally stops taking it, and your body has its first honest accounting of the cost. Daniel arrived an hour later. He had driven down from the hotel where he had been staying for the past several weeks. He had extended his stay twice without either of us discussing it explicitly, the way old friends sometimes make decisions by simply continuing to show up. He came into the shop and looked at my face and went to the cabinet where I kept a second coffee mug and poured himself a cup and pulled a stool to the workbench and sat down. We drank our coffee. After a while, Daniel said, "When did you know it would work?" I thought about that honestly. "Night one," I said. "When she said it was discipline." He looked at me. "Why?" "Because she said it in a hallway," I said. Out loud, in front of a nurse she didn't even look at. I set my mug down. People who believe they're untouchable stop seeing the people around them. They stop calculating for the ones they've decided don't count. That nurse called me. That nurse was Cameron Doss, and she called me because she recognized the Caldwell name from a case that had broken someone she knew, and she decided that this time she wasn't going to file it away. I paused. Victoria built a system that ran on other people's silence. She just stopped noticing that silence requires a reason and reasons run out. Daniel nodded slowly, turning his mug in his hands. "Hargrove told me something the night of the lot," he said. "After you drove off, he said he had known for 2 years that Samuel was in Fresno." I looked at him. "He found him." "He found him?" Daniel confirmed. "He tracked him down 18 months after he retired, went there himself, knocked on the door, sat with him for 4 hours. He paused. "Samuel was too afraid. The case didn't have enough around it yet to protect him. No Claire data, no Frank invoices, no Tammy phone. Hargrove made a judgment call. He left Samuel where he was and told him that if anyone ever came with enough to make it safe, he'd know." I sat with that for a moment. Hargrove retired driving to Fresno and sitting with a frightened man in a small apartment for 4 hours, and then driving home and waiting. Adding Samuel's location to the file he kept in his study, keeping the door open from his end. "He told you this after?" I asked. "He said he wanted you to know eventually," Daniel said. "Not that night. After." He looked at me. "He said the missing piece was always Samuel, and Samuel was always waiting for Claire. I thought about my daughter at 32 years old, working alone for 8 months, building a case file in secret while going home every night to a man who was part of the system she was documenting. I thought about the particular kind of courage that looks like nothing from the outside because it wears ordinary clothes and keeps ordinary hours and does not announce itself. I finished my coffee. I rinsed the mug at the shop sink and dried it and put it back in the cabinet. Then I drove to Fresno one more time. Samuel was still in the apartment. He would be for a few more weeks. He had begun the process of reassembling a legal identity, a real one, and it moved at the pace such processes move. He had a lawyer now. He had a real phone number. He had begun cautiously and incrementally to exist in the world again. He opened the door without the chain this time. We sat at the same table where I had placed Claire's photograph 3 months before. The curtains were open. That was new. "I heard about the sentencing," he said. 14 years, I said. He nodded. His hands resting on the table were steadier than the last time I had seen them. The exhaustion was still in his face. 6 years of it didn't dissolve in a season, but underneath it something else had begun to surface. Not peace exactly. Something more like the early stages of it. The way a room looks when someone has opened the windows after a long time, and the air is just beginning to change. "Your daughter," he said. "She came here because she believed I still existed, not just that I was alive." He paused. "That matters. It's a different thing." I looked at him across the table. "She was right," I said. We shook hands when I left, and it was a different handshake than the one I had not offered on the first visit when he had been a man I wasn't sure I could trust, and I was a stranger at his door. This one had weight and history in it, the kind of handshake that closes something and opens something else at the same time. I drove home in the early evening, the Central Valley flattening out behind me and the city building ahead, and I thought about Margaret the whole way, about the box she had never known would carry what it ended up carrying, about the daughter she had raised who had inherited her quick hands and her stubborn precision, and her absolute unwillingness to put something down once she had picked it up. When I got home, I went upstairs to the attic and took the box down from the shelf and carried it to the kitchen table. I opened it. It was empty now, the drive and the notebook with Rebecca, the letter Claire had written to me, still in my desk drawer where I had put it and not yet had the steadiness to read. I held the box for a while. Then I carried it back upstairs and put it in the same spot on the same shelf in the gap between the cardboard box of Margaret's books and the lamp I kept meaning to donate. Empty was different from gone. The box was still the thing I had made for Margaret with my hands. It was still the thing Claire had trusted when she needed something that would hold. I went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table and read my daughter's letter. It took me a long time to get through it. When I finished, my phone buzzed on the table. Claire's number. A text short the way she texted when she was tired and content and not performing anything for anyone. "Doctor says I can come home next week. Can you pick me up?" I looked at that message for a long moment, at the ordinary simplicity of it, at the fact that my daughter was asking me to come get her, the way she had been asking me to come get her since she was 16, and her first car had broken down on the 101, and she had called me from a gas station payphone because she hadn't had a cell phone yet. And I had driven 40 minutes in the rain to find her standing outside the phone booth, with her arms crossed and her chin up, refusing to look relieved even though she was. I typed back, "I'll be there." Then I put the phone down and looked at the kitchen that had been too quiet for too long. And outside the window, the street was doing what streets do in the early fall in Los Angeles, holding the last of the day's warmth. The light going amber and long, the city. I picked Claire up from Cedars-Sinai on a Tuesday morning in late October, which put us in Los Angeles rush hour traffic for 45 minutes on the way home, and neither of us minded. She sat in the passenger seat of the F-250, with her right hand resting carefully in her lap, and watched the city move past the window, the overpass graffiti, the palm trees standing their particular, improbable height against the pale morning sky, the taco stands opening for the day, the ordinary working machinery of a city that had not stopped for any of what we had been through, and would not have known to. She watched all of it with the focused attention of someone who has been inside for a long time and is relearning the texture of the outside world. I did not try to fill the drive with conversation. At one point, somewhere on the interchange, she reached across with her left hand and put it briefly over mine on the gear shift, and I turned my palm up, and she held it for a moment before letting go. That was enough. The rehabilitation was slow, in the way that real recovery is always slow. Not the dramatic montage-ready progress of someone discovering their strength, but the quiet, grinding daily work of convincing damaged tissue to do what it had done easily before. 3 times a week, she went to a therapist in Silver Lake. who worked her through exercises so precise and so painful that Claire came home afterward with the particular gray exhaustion of someone who has spent an hour fighting their own body and won small. I watched her and said nothing, and left soup on the stove and did not ask her how she was doing more than once a day. There was an afternoon in November, 3 weeks after she came home, when she drove herself to my shop. I heard her car in the lot and came out of the back room to find her standing in the middle of the shop floor, looking at the tool rack on the far wall, the rack that held Margaret's old tools, the ones I had kept exactly where Margaret had put them 20 years ago. Not as a shrine, but because they were good tools and they belonged where they were. Claire was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, and her hair was pulled back, and she looked standing there in the shop light so much like her mother at 30 that my chest did something involuntary, and I had to look at the floor for a second before I looked at her again. She walked to the rack. She studied it for a moment. Then she reached up with her right hand and took down the small channel lock pliers, Margaret's favorite, the ones she had used for everything from tightening hose clamps to opening paint cans, and held them. Her hand shook. Not slightly, visibly, the whole hand, the tremor running from her wrist through her fingers, the grip unsteady, the pliers tilting in her palm. I took 3 steps toward her, and then stopped when I saw her jaw set. Her eyes were fixed on her own hand with the particular concentration of someone who is trying to will something into being by force of attention alone. I stepped back. She tried again. Her face was tight with effort, and something else, something that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but carried elements of both the expression of a person reclaiming something that was taken from them and finding the reclaiming harder than the taking. Her eyes filled, and 1 tear ran down her left cheek, and she did not reach up to wipe it, too focused, too intent, too committed to what her right hand was trying to do. The pliers steadied. Not fully. There was still a tremor underneath, still the ghost of damage in the way she held them, but they were steady enough, centered in her palm, gripped with a grip that was hers, that she had made happen, that no one had given her. Claire let out a breath that was not quite a sob and not quite a laugh, and was something raw and complicated from the middle of her chest that I will not try to name more precisely than that, because it does not have a more precise name. I turned toward the workbench and looked at the wall, and blinked several times in rapid succession, and was grateful she was not looking at me. After a while she said, "Dad?" "Yeah," I said. My voice was mostly steady. "That night, when Victoria was standing outside the surgery room," she paused. "When she told you it was family discipline, did you want to—" She stopped, started again more directly. "Did you want to hurt them?" I turned around. Claire was looking at me with the direct, clear-eyed attention that was the most purely her thing about her. No flinch in it, no preemptive softening, just the honest question asked, honestly. I thought about the hallway, the cream blazer, the way Victoria had adjusted her cuff while she said it, the sound of the surgical suite doors behind me. "Yes," I said. Claire nodded like she had expected that, and was glad I hadn't pretended otherwise. "What stopped you?" she asked. "You," I said. "The math of it. If I had done what I wanted to do in that hallway, you would have woken up and your father would have been gone. They would have taken your hand and then taken me." I looked at her. I wasn't going to let them have 2 things. She held that for a moment. "So, what did you take from them?" she asked. I looked at my daughter standing in her mother's flannel shirt, holding her mother's pliers in a hand that had nearly been destroyed so that she would stop doing exactly what she was doing right now. "The thing that kept them standing," I said, "the fear of the people around them, the silence that protected them." I looked at the pliers in her hand. Every system like that runs on one thing. Not money, not lawyers, not connections. Fear. The fear of the people inside it that the cost of leaving is higher than the cost of staying. I paused. When that fear starts running the other direction, there's nothing underneath. There never was. Claire looked at the pliers in her hand for a long moment. Then she looked up at me. "It was Mom's box that did it," she said quietly. "Didn't you think that was strange, that she made this box to hold the most important things, and the most important thing it ever held was that?" I thought about Margaret on a Saturday morning, with coffee and one of her rare smiles, about a woman who had understood long before I did that what we build outlasts us in ways we cannot predict. "No," I said, "I didn't think that was strange at all." Claire set the pliers back on the rack carefully, exactly where they had been. She looked at them for a moment, then she looked at the whole rack, at the tools at the shop, at the work that had been done here, and the work that would be done here at the ordinary stubborn continuation of things. She turned to me. "I want to come back to work," she said. "Not immediately. The therapist says another 6 weeks before I can handle any real pressure. But I want to know that it's waiting." "It's waiting," I said. She nodded, and then she crossed the shop floor and put her arms around me, her left arm strong and her right careful. And I held my daughter in my shop on a November afternoon, and felt the particular weight of her, the same weight she had had since she was small, familiar as the grain of the walnut box, as permanent as anything I had ever made with my hands. I have spent 60 years learning that the things worth building are not the things that cannot be broken. Nothing cannot be broken. The things worth building are the things that, when they are broken, show you where the real structure was, all the way along the part that held, even when everything else came apart. I built doors for 19 years, opened them, studied them, made them irrelevant. Then I came home and built the kind that held, and I thought that was the work. But the work, as it turned out, had been Claire all along, the thing Margaret and I built together in the ordinary, daily, unspectacular way. You build a person, 1 year at a time, one conversation at a time, one ordinary Tuesday at a time, until the day comes when you find out what they are made of. The Caldwells didn't fall because I was stronger than them. They fell because in the end there was no one left willing to stay silent to protect them. And the person who made that possible was standing in my shop in November, learning to hold a pair of pliers in a hand they told her might not fully recover, and doing it anyway. I spent 19 years learning how to open doors. But the most important thing I ever learned had nothing to do with force. It had to do with patience, with truth, and with the quiet faith that when something is built on lies, God does not need you to tear it down. You only need to find the hinge. This is a family story I never wanted to live. Looking back, I made one mistake that cost Claire everything I trusted that silence meant safety. It didn't. Silence only protected the people doing the harm. So, here is what I want to say to you. Directly, don't do what I did. Don't wait until the damage is done to ask the hard questions about the people sitting at your table. Family betrayal doesn't announce itself. It builds quietly the way rot builds inside a wall, invisible until the whole thing shifts. My opinion. The most dangerous person in any room is not the one making threats. It's the one smiling while they make plans. Victoria Caldwell taught me that. So did Claire, in the best possible way. This has been a family story about what it costs to stay silent and what it costs to finally speak. Every family betrayal I have ever seen runs on the same fuel, the fear of the people who know the truth. Remove that fear, and the whole structure falls. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Tell me what you would have done in that hospital hallway. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a good time. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than I can say. The following stories contain some fictional elements created for the purpose of storytelling and reflection. If this type of content is not for you, feel free to step away and find something that serves you better, and there is absolutely no judgment.